Let's step into the boots of a weary wanderer for a moment. Welcome to This Explainer, coming to you straight from the edge of the rotting Twilight City. It's a grim place. Here, time just sits, breathless. The fat flies of complacency are literally feasting on the stagnant dreams of a race that simply no longer builds. Hope doesn't ignite fires of innovation anymore, it just stirs up ancient dust in these abandoned halls. So we're going to navigate this dark fable together, peeling back the scabs of our own making to really understand this creeping terminal disease of ultimate stagnation. Right away, in the shadows of the city, I find myself locked in this incredibly tense, cynical dialogue with my own shadow, the wit. And this voice, it isn't just some trick of the dark or a phantom of exhaustion. It acts like a distorting mirror, actively mocking the false comforts I violently cling to. It whispers from the abyss, exposing a pretty terrible truth. We are a race living on stagnant dreams. We clutch onto this stone resolve, pretending we're these grand statues of greatness, when in reality, that stone is about as fragile as wet paper mache. We are suffocating in what's known as the velvet gloom. Figures of the dark, like Beelzebub and Lucifer, they just hum with this heavy air, gloating that every distinct feature has dissolved into a faceless, gray wen. The stagnation is so absolute that men now only see the rope of failure, even when they're gazing right up at the glorious peak of the mountain. Moving forward has become a completely hollow trust. People just rot in place. They're paralyzed by the terror of making a mistake, wrapping themselves tightly in the velvet gloom of the long tiredness. Section 1. The Ashen Throne and the Last Man. So, here we are in this world of ultimate mediocrity, the realm of the last man. The cycle of human ambition has completely halted. We're just sitting upon thrones of cold soot. I mean, think about it. We take Nietzsche's noble will to power, that raw, untamed drive to overcome, to build, to conquer, and watch as a demon named Mephistopheles twist it into this wretched terminal state, the will to nap. The striving human soul is led right into a vast, empty desert of logic. In this suffocating desire for absolute certainty, no one wants to risk waking up. They'd much rather have the safety of a permanent, unmoving slumber over the chaotic, unpredictable risk of truly living. And watch how this decay actually plays out through a tragic reverse metamorphosis. Instead of evolving forward, the striving soul rots backward. In hour 1, the fiery, creative yes to life, the spark of the creator, just fades into a mere shadow on the grass. By hour 2, the fierce, rebellious lion, who was once ready to fight the dragon of thou shalt, is reduced to weeping. And by hour 3, we're left with a sleeping, broken camel burdened heavily by the weight of old values. The ultimate human potential, the overman, is buried, putting ambitious kings and tired slaves in the exact same indifferent tomb. Section 2. Smashing the Stagnant Myths. To actually break out of this suffocating safety, I realized a pretty terrifying truth. You cannot just think your way out of the infinite dungeon of high time. I need a tool to strike and completely shatter the frozen earth. Enter the iron hammer of genealogy. Now, I don't wield a physical weapon to bring down stone walls, but rather a merciless intellectual tool. Genealogy traces the historical origins of our deepest beliefs to show us they aren't absolute, divine truths, but merely human inventions. We have to use this hammer to violently shatter the stagnant historical myths that are keeping the Twilight City asleep. By swinging this heavy hammer of historical critique, we systematically shatter these massive, comforting illusions. We smash the beautiful, but entirely fake, stained glass masks of our ancestors. We break right through the intellectual armor of absolute certainty, exposing the trembling hands of a man desperate for applause. We literally tear apart the sorcerer's blueprints that try to neatly map out the void of existence, ultimately collapsing the rigid papier-mâché walls of the human ego into a heap of delightful, liberating absurdity. Let's move to Section 3, the Agents of Chaos. Now, once those old, calcified systems are completely smashed, these raw, chaotic forces step in to dissolve the architect's rigid blueprints. We face two distinct disruptors that absolutely refuse to nap. First, there's the hunger. The hunger doesn't bother arguing with the strict logic of the Twilight City. It simply finds that stagnation highly nutritious and devours it. It takes precise definitions of debt and law and liquefies them into a wet, black slurry. But the jester? He operates differently. He doesn't eat the system, he trips it. By introducing a stumble, an artful mistake, The gesture forces the strict, tragic, terminal script of the city to become an unscripted, improvised comedy. This shift from rigid order to complete absurdity is profound. The architect maps empty voids and writes precise equations of isolation, but the disruptions answer with feasts of absence and wet slurry. Just imagine a great merchant issuing a terrifying, rigid decree of execution. It's final, it's absolute. But then, the jester simply bumps the table, spills a cup of tea and smudges the ink. Suddenly, that fatal decree of execution is misread as a decree of desert. A single foolish mistake completely upends all rigid authority and introduces life right back into the machinery. The jester tells us, "I am the breeze that reminds a stiff world how to dance, and I call your error art." This spilled cup of tea, this foolish stumble, it acts as an essential pressure valve for existence. If the last man insists on absolute certainty and impossible tension, reality is eventually going to snap. But the jester's breeze enters a stiff, paralyzed world, reframing our human errors not as fatal flaws or sins, but as artful salvation. It's literally the very breath of creation returning to a dead room. And finally, Section 4, the living page. As the jester and the hunger do their dark work, the paralyzing tragedy of the void finally surrenders to comedy. The heavy, cynical shadow that once mocked me transforms into a soft velvet floor for an empty amphitheater. Under the heat of this chaotic medicine, our heavy iron hammer of genealogy beautifully melts. Its rigid purpose of smashing the past is complete. It organically shifts from a cold weapon of destruction right into a warm, wooden wand of creative freedom. I no longer need to destroy. I am finally free to create upon the living page. So, in your own life, when faced with the heavy expectations of a rigid, dying world, what will you choose? Will you accept the cold ash of a perfectly logical termination where you simply stop striving and succumb to the will to nap? Or will you embrace the damp page, the wet ink of the jester's wand, and find the courage to make an artful mistake? Step up to the altar of creation and write your own unscripted line. Until next time, thanks for surviving this explainer.